do you have are you timing us?
I am.
Oh, okay.
If I
Then by all means, Helen, take your seat.
Slides for the lock.
Can I wait till she gets the timer thing ready, Ron?
We're ready. We're ready.
I don't want to get that.
There you go. You can go.
I can start? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I am Eleanor Marsh-Stormer, and I am your probate judge, and I'm running for re-election. You may know me from my prior years. I've been a judge for 23 years, which is hard to believe, and I've been in the probate court since my election in 2012. Some of you may know that I helped start the mental health court in 2000 in Akron, and that's now proliferated to make mental health courts in the rest of the county. And I'm very proud of the work that NAMI did, and I'm proud of the work that I was able to do with NAMI to make those courts a reality. There are three ways that the probate court works with the mentally ill. The first is through guardianships, where we oversee those people who are charged with the care of someone who's diagnosed as being mentally ill and cannot make decisions for themselves. I can tell you that we've been very assertive about removing guardians who are doing a bad job. We recently had the occasion to remove a woman who had been caring for her brother. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she was stealing from him, had been stealing from many, many years from him. And 6 months into our discovery of this, she was removed. So we take it very seriously, our oversight of any of the guardianships in Summit County. The second way we deal with the mentally ill is through civil commitments. We have magistrates who go to the hospitals within a very short period of time in order to meet with people who are believed to be in need of hospitalization. And when they are in need of hospitalization, they are civilly committed to the probate court, which brings me to the third way that we are involved with the mentally ill in probate court. There's a new law that went into effect yesterday. It's known as Senate Bill 43, which allows family members of non-compliant mentally ill people to bring them through the court system and have them ordered into treatment. The law changed our requirements, so during the civil commitment procedure, we no longer order them into hospital, we order them into court-ordered treatment. This gives us a range of options for your loved one in terms of how they're going to be treated. They don't necessarily have to stay in a hospital or in a forensic hospital. They can be treated in the community. I'm also looking forward to using this law, which has some things that will have to be worked out with it, as we enter the new year in 2015. It is my hope to start what's known as a recovery court. And I call it a recovery court based upon the experience that I had in mental health court in Akron Municipal Court. There, a person had been charged with a crime, found to be in need of treatment, possibly committing the crime because they were not on the medicine they needed, possibly because in addition to that they were using drugs. And what we found was that people could be cajoled, if you will, into getting the treatment that they needed, and when they were properly medicated could come back and fully participate in programming that would help them get jobs, live independently, have a full and satisfying life. I'd like to try to do that before people get arrested, if possible. And the way to do that is to start to work with the people who've been civilly committed, and as they enter the community, we would be providing support along with CSS, Community Support Services, to provide them with the support that they need so that they can stay on the good medication and stay away from possibly the bad drugs. We know that sometimes illegal drugs can reduce the symptoms that people have when they are mentally ill, and that it's attractive for people who fluctuate on their medicine to do cocaine, for example, heroin, for example, and that this can lead obviously to involvement with the criminal justice system. So my hope is that by working with the ADM board, we've had several meetings about this, and working with the family members of NAMI, that we can craft a solution that allows us to work with your loved ones before they get arrested and before they are in jail. So we would be doing two things as we go forward. First is implementing Senate Bill 43 in the real world, so that if you have a person who is in need of treatment and has not gotten treatment, you can bring them to court through an affidavit. NAMI has lots of information about that on their website. And then eventually I'd like to be able to work with people who are non-compliant before they get into big bad trouble through a recovery court. So I look forward to working for you in the future, and in order to do that I need to be re-elected. So I am asking for your support. I'm Eleanor Marsh-Stormer, running for re-election of probate court. Thank you. Yes, sir.
That people that have mental illness and go to the court can do community service to keep them from being idle? Is that a possibility?
Yes? That was an easy question. How would I do that, though? The question is, you know, it's interesting because when I was the mental health court judge, that was a major component, how to keep people from having idle hands, which is the devil's playground, right? So we worked with CSS on that and tried to find community service opportunities that were appropriate. For example, there were some people who could not be in crowds. There were some people who could not ride the bus to get to a place to do community service. But it was absolutely, I think, an important element of what we tried to do in that court. So the framework already exists for us to do that. So I would be very open to try to use that as well, because I think it's true, if you don't have much to do and you just watch television, you have a tendency to do things that you shouldn't do, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Next we have John Oldham.
Good evening. My name is John Oldham. I'm a candidate for Summit County Court of Common Pleas. I am prepared by experience and I'm committed to our community. My experience as a private practice attorney was very broad, and my work in the courts as a magistrate has given me a unique skill set to take with me every time I take the bench to be a fair, effective, and decisive judge if elected this November. I'm currently a magistrate under Judge Eleanor Marsh Stormer, and in that capacity I preside over civil commitment hearings. Many of you may be familiar with those hearings, but my experience in the private practice and work as a magistrate make it so I am able to understand the dynamics in that room when we're conducting these civil commitment hearings, and be able to listen to everyone's perspective in the room, and most importantly, the person suffering from a mental illness, to make sure that he or she is heard, and that I take great pride in explaining when I do rule that they should be committed. I take great pride in thoroughly explaining that process to the mentally ill person, and explaining that the best interest is what their families have in mind, what the doctors have in mind, and what I had in mind when issuing my decision to have them committed. I have many examples, but one example is of a young man named Brian who was away in college, and his parents shipped him off to college, and Brian was at the prime of his life. Well, he came home from a holiday break and something was wrong with Brian. He ended up being pink slipped in, committed. I came in, I met the family in a very trying time, and I was able to explain my best to Brian that everyone, especially his parents, had his best interest at heart. I held that he had to be committed, and Brian walked out upset, even though I did everything I could to explain to him what was happening and why it was happening. Brian's parents then approached me, and they were so grateful that I took the time to reach out to Brian and explain to him that his parents were truly in his corner. But most importantly, his parents were pleased that someone took the time to actually listen to Brian, and that Brian was committed, so hopefully he could get the help that he needs. I will take this understanding of mental illness with me to the Common Pleas General Division, where I hope to implement mental health court at the felony level if the numbers are there to justify that court. Mental illness is the root of a lot of crime that we have out there. Not violent crime, but crime nonetheless. And if we can treat mental illness, we can give people the proper foundation that they need so they can live proper lives and successful, productive lives in our community. My private practice experience was very broad, and I did that deliberately so I could be the best prepared judicial candidate possible. I represented criminal defendants, victims of crime, insurance companies, personal injury victims, creditors, debtors, you name it, I represented them. And that makes it so I look at each file with a fair and impartial perspective. I look for justice, not for the plaintiff or for the defendant right out of the gate. My work as a magistrate in 2 courts allows me to hone these skills. I can anticipate where a case is going and work with the people to get us to a quicker resolution. I'm committed to our community. I'm a trustee of the Akron Bar Association and the Community Health Center Foundation. I come from a family of public servants. My brother's a police officer. My mother is a retired Akron Public School guidance counselor. My father is a former Akron chief prosecutor. I learned by growing up with my family the importance of being committed to our community to make sure we have a strong community. Well, it makes sense. You need a strong court system for a strong community. I believe I have the experience, the compassion, and the commitment to serve as Summit County Judge and to serve in that job in the best possible way. I have more legal experience than my opponent, and I believe I am more committed. I have a wife and 2 daughters, and they're the most important thing to me, as I'm sure your families are the most important things to you. I want to work to make sure all of our families are proud to call Summit County home, and that all of our families choose to remain in Summit County instead of moving on. Please vote for me, John Oldham, on November 4th. Thank you.
No questions?
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. Thanks. Next, we have Allison McCarthy, who's running for Common Pleas Court Judge.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Judge Allison McCarty, and I am one of your 10 Common Pleas General Division judges. I would like to start out and just tell you a little bit about myself and my experience that has led me to this place. I started my legal career over 27 years ago, and I started working within the court system as a judicial attorney. And then I moved on to the Summit County Prosecutor's Office. I worked there for 10 years and handled primarily the felony criminal matters. So I was the role of the prosecutor, the person that was representing the state of Ohio and representing the community and trying to help, convict the guilty and keep our community safe. I did that in the same court in which I now currently sit as a judge. After having served 10 years as a prosecutor, I was appointed and then elected to the Akron Municipal Court as a judge there, and I served there for 9 years. And the Municipal Court in Akron is the court that handles, we kind of called it the People's Court. It's the court that handles those individuals that are getting into trouble with the law, but maybe they're not real serious offenders. So they're the misdemeanor cases, some of which can be serious. And then it's the lower dollar civil matters and the traffic cases and the eviction matters. So we had a lot of people that came through our court. Why? That's the court of the highest traffic of individuals, if you will, where most people end up if they end up in court. And since 2009, January of 2009, I was elected in the fall of 2008 to the Common Pleas Court, and I've been serving there as your judge. And it is my pleasure and honor to hold this position. I am running for re-election this year. I am honored to be rated highly recommended by my peers at the Akron Bar Association and am endorsed by several police lodges in my bid for re-election. I would like to talk to you a little bit about what I see within the mental health community and how it impacts us in the courts and how we interrelate and try to deal with this problem. And it is a significant one, and it does affect basically everyone in the community. We have offenders who are diagnosed with mental illness and have been from their youth, and we have many mentally ill offenders who are not diagnosed at all and have been finding other ways to compensate for their illness that have led them into the court system. We also have mentally ill offenders who have co-occurring substance abuse problems that have led them to our system. And so one of the things that you have to do as a judge, along with the prosecutor, along with the defense lawyer, is try to figure out who is the person that we're dealing with here and what are their issues. What is the offense that they're being accused of having committed? How serious is this? Is this person a danger to themselves? Are they a danger to the community? Is there any way that we can intervene and somehow change this behavior if it's found that it actually did occur? And it can be very complicated. We have many offenders who don't manage their illness well, and they may be involved with agencies like CSS that provides help for the chronically mentally ill, but maybe they're not compliant, and their lack of compliance causes many problems. And so we do, within the court system, have many ways in which we try to address those individuals that we don't feel are a significant danger to the community, but definitely need to be kept compliant, so they will stay in compliance with the law. We have a special unit of our probation department that specifically deals with mentally ill offenders, and those are specially trained probation officers that have the compassion, the knowledge, the experience, and the training to address these issues properly, and also educate the court on what each individual's issues are. I try to, make a point of looking at each person as an individual and respect where they are in their life, and try to fashion the proper resolution for their case that is the balance of safety for the community as well as respecting the needs of that person. And so I am running for re-election, and I am respectfully asking for your vote. And I'll take any questions. Yes?
This question could probably be asked to all judicial candidates, but I would, more of a statement, and then I'd like to hear your response. Do most criminals have a component of mental illness?
I would probably answer that question, no. But it depends on how you would define mental illness. I mean, there's many offenders who deal with self-esteem issues, depression issues, which can be classified obviously as a form of mental illness. They may have difficulty controlling their anger. And those are sort of borderline, they're more personality issues that, that a lot of offenders suffer from what we call personality disorders, which don't necessarily mean that they're mentally ill. They just have some problems following rules and comporting with how society thinks they should behave. That's a complicated question, and that it's part of hoping that their attorney learns about them, their probation officer educates themselves, and that they're open and honest about their situation, and that you have a judge who has a discerning ear and who has experience in trying to figure out where this person is on that, on that plane. All right, thank you.